Leviticus Chapter 1. And Jehovah proceeded to call Moses and speak to him out of the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, In case some man of you would present an offering to Jehovah from the domestic animals, you should present your offering from the herd and from the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, a male, a sound one, is what he should present. At the entrance of the tent of meeting he should present it of his own free will before Jehovah. And he must lay his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it must be graciously accepted for him to make atonement for him. Then the young bull must be slaughtered before Jehovah, and the sons of Aaron, the priests, must present the blood and sprinkle the blood round about upon the altar, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the burnt offering must be skinned and cut up into its parts. And the sons of Aaron, the priests, must put fire on the altar and set wood in order on the fire. And the sons of Aaron, the priests, must set the pieces in order with the head and the suet over the wood that is on the fire that is on the altar. And its intestines and its shanks will be washed with water, and the priest must make all of its smoke on the altar as a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a restful odor to Jehovah. And if his offering for a burnt offering is from the flock, from the young rams or the goats, a male, a sound one, is what he will present. And it must be slaughtered at the side of the altar to the north before Jehovah, and the sons of Aaron, the priests, must sprinkle its blood round about upon the altar. And he must cut it up into its parts and its head and its suet, and the priest must set them in order over the wood that is on the fire that is on the altar. And he will wash the intestines and the shanks with water, and the priest must present all of it and make it smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a restful odor to Jehovah. However, if his offering as a burnt offering to Jehovah is from the fowls, then he must present his offering from the turtle doves, or the male pigeons. And the priest must present it at the altar and nip off its head, and make it smoke upon the altar. But its blood must be drained out upon the side of the altar. And he must remove its crop with its feathers, and throw it beside the altar, to the east, to the place for the fatty ashes. And he must cleave it at its wings. He must not divide it. Then the priest must make it smoke on the altar over the wood that is on the fire. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a restful odor to Jehovah. Chapter 2. Now in case some soul would present as an offering a grain offering to Jehovah, his offering should prove to be fine flour, and he must pour oil over it and put frankincense upon it. And he must bring it to the sons of Aaron, the priests, and the priest must grasp from it his handful of its fine flour and its oil, along with all its frankincense. And he must make it smoke as a remembrancer of it upon the altar, as an offering made by fire of a restful odor to Jehovah. And what is left of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons, as something most holy from Jehovah's offerings made by fire. And in case you would present as an offering a grain offering in the way of something baked in the oven, it should be of fine flour, unfermented ring-shaped cakes moistened with oil, or unfermented wafers smeared with oil. And if your offering is a grain offering from off the griddle, it should prove to be of fine flour moistened with oil, unfermented. There should be a breaking of it up into pieces, and you must pour oil upon it. It is a grain offering. And if your offering is a grain offering out of the deep fat kettle, it should be made of fine flour with oil. And you must bring the grain offering that was made of these to Jehovah, and it must be presented to the priest, and he must bring it near to the altar. And the priest must lift off some of the grain offering as a remembrancer of it, and must make it smoke on the altar, as an offering made by fire of a restful odor to Jehovah. And what is left of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons, as something most holy of Jehovah's offerings by fire. No grain offering that you will present to Jehovah should be made a leavened thing, because you must make no sourdough and no honey at all smoke as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. As an offering of the first fruits, you will present them to Jehovah, and they must not come up onto the altar for a restful odor. And every offering of your grain offering you will season with salt, and you must not allow the salt of the covenant of your God to be missing upon your grain offering. Along with every offering of yours, you will present salt. And if you would present the grain offering of the first ripe fruits to Jehovah, you should present green ears roasted with fire, the grits of new grain, as the grain offering of your first ripe fruits. And you must put oil upon it, and place frankincense upon it. It is a grain offering. And the priest must make the remembrancer of its smoke, that is, some of its grits and oil, along with all its frankincense, as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. Chapter 3. And if his offering is a communion sacrifice, if he is presenting it from the herd, whether a male or a female, a sound one is what he will present before Jehovah. And he must lay his hand upon the head of his offering, and it must be slaughtered at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priests, must sprinkle the blood round about upon the altar. And he must present some of the communion sacrifice as an offering made by fire to Jehovah, namely, the fat that covers the intestines, even all the fat that is over the intestines, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, the same as that upon the loins. And as for the appendage upon the liver, he will remove it, along with the kidneys. And Aaron's sons must make it smoke on the altar, upon the burnt offering that is over the wood that is on the fire, as an offering made by fire of a restful odor to Jehovah. And if his offering is from the flock for a communion sacrifice to Jehovah, a male or a female, a sound one is what he will present. If he is presenting a young ram as his offering, then he must present it before Jehovah. And he must lay his hand upon the head of his offering, and it must be slaughtered before the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons must sprinkle its blood round about upon the altar. And from the communion sacrifice he must present its fat as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. The entire fatty tail is what he will remove near the backbone, and the fat that covers the intestines, even all the fat that is upon the intestines, and the 2 kidneys and the fat that is upon them, the same as that upon the loins. And as for the appendage upon the liver, he will remove it along with the kidneys. And the priest must make it smoke on the altar as food, an offering made by fire to Jehovah. And if his offering is a goat, then he must present it before Jehovah. And he must lay his hand upon its head, and it must be slaughtered before the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons must sprinkle its blood round about upon the altar. And from it he must present as his offering, as an offering made by fire to Jehovah, the fat that covers the intestines, even all the fat that is upon the intestines, and the 2 kidneys and the fat that is upon them, the same as that upon the loins. And as for the appendage upon the liver, he will remove it along with the kidneys. And the priest must make them smoke upon the altar as food, an offering made by fire for a restful odor. All the fat belongs to Jehovah. It is a statute to time indefinite for your generations, in all your dwelling places. You must not eat any fat or any blood at all. Chapter 4. And Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, In case a soul sins by mistake in any of the things that Jehovah commands should not be done, and he actually does one of them, if the priest, the anointed one, sins so as to bring guiltiness upon the people, then he must present for his sin that he has committed a sound young bull to Jehovah as a sin offering. And he must bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before Jehovah, and must lay his hand upon the bull's head, and he must slaughter the bull before Jehovah. And the priest, the anointed one, must take some of the bull's blood and bring it into the tent of meeting. And the priest must dip his finger in the blood, and spatter some of the blood 7 times before Jehovah in front of the curtain of the holy place. And the priest must put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar of perfumed incense before Jehovah, which is in the tent of meeting. And all the rest of the bull's blood he will pour at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. As to all the fat of the bull of the sin offering, he will lift up from it the fat that covers over the intestines, even all the fat that is over the intestines, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, the same as that upon the loins. And as for the appendage upon the liver, he will remove it along with the kidneys. It will be the same as what is lifted up of a bull of the communion sacrifice. And the priest must make them smoke upon the altar of burnt offering. But as for the skin of the bull, and all its flesh along with its head and its shanks and its intestines and its dung, he must have the entire bull taken out to the outskirts of the camp to a clean place where the fatty ashes are poured out, and he must burn it upon wood in the fire. Where the fatty ashes are poured out, it should be burned. Now if the entire assembly of Israel makes a mistake, and the matter has been hidden from the eyes of the congregation, in that they have done one of all the things that Jehovah commands should not be done, and so have become guilty, and the sin that they have committed against it has become known, then the congregation must present a young bull for a sin offering, and must bring it before the tent of meeting. And the older men of the assembly must lay their hands upon the bull's head before Jehovah, and the bull must be slaughtered before Jehovah. Then the priest, the anointed one, must bring some of the bull's blood into the tent of meeting. And the priest must dip his finger into some of the blood, and spatter it 7 times before Jehovah in front of the curtain. And he will put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar that is before Jehovah, which is in the tent of meeting. And all the rest of the blood he will pour at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And he will lift up all its fat from it, and he must make it smoke on the altar. And he must do to the bull just as he did to the other bull of the sin offering. That is the way he will do to it. And the priest must make an atonement for them, and so it must be forgiven them. And he must have the bull taken out to the outskirts of the camp, and must burn it, just as he burned the first bull. It is a sin offering for the congregation. When a chieftain sins, and he does commit unintentionally one of all the things that Jehovah his God commands should not be done, and so has become guilty, or his sin that he has committed against the commandment has been made known to him, then he must bring as his offering a male kid of the goats, a sound one. And he must lay his hand upon the head of the young goat, and slaughter it in the place where the burnt offering is regularly slaughtered before Jehovah. It is a sin offering. And the priest must take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he will pour the rest of its blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering. And he will make all its fat smoke on the altar, like the fat of the communion sacrifice. And the priest must make an atonement for him for his sin, and so it must be forgiven him. And if any soul of the people of the land sins unintentionally by his doing one of the things that Jehovah commands should not be done, and he does become guilty, or his sin that he has committed has been made known to him, then he must bring as his offering a female kid of the goats, a sound one, for his sin that he has committed. And he must lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slaughter the sin offering in the same place as the burnt offering. And the priest must take some of its blood with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he will pour all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. And he will remove all its fat, just as the fat was removed from off the communion sacrifice. And the priest must make it smoke on the altar as a restful odor to Jehovah. And the priest must make an atonement for him, and so it must be forgiven him. But if he would bring a lamb as his offering for a sin offering, a sound female lamb is what he should bring. And he must lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slaughter it as a sin offering in the place where the burnt offering is regularly slaughtered. And the priest must take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he will pour all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. And he will remove all its fat, the same as the fat of the young ram of the communion sacrifice is regularly removed. And the priest must make them smoke on the altar upon Jehovah's offerings made by fire. And the priest must make an atonement for him for his sin that he has committed, and so it must be forgiven him. Chapter 5. Now in case a soul sins in that he has heard public cursing, and he is a witness, or he has seen it, or has come to know of it, if he does not report it, then he must answer for his error. Or when a soul touches some unclean thing, whether the dead body of an unclean wild beast, or the dead body of an unclean domestic animal, or the dead body of an unclean swarming creature, although it has been hidden from him, still he is unclean and has become guilty. Or in case he touches the uncleanness of a man as respects any uncleanness of his, with which he may become unclean, although it had been hidden from him, and yet he himself has come to know it, then he has become guilty. Or in case a soul swears to the extent of speaking thoughtlessly with his lips to do evil or to do good as respects anything at all that the man might speak thoughtlessly in a sworn statement, although it had been hidden from him, and yet he himself has come to know it, then he has become guilty as respects one of these things. And it must occur that in case he becomes guilty as respects one of these things, then he must confess in what way he has sinned. And he must bring his guilt offering to Jehovah for his sin that he has committed, namely, a female from the flock, a female lamb or a female kid of the goats, for a sin offering, and the priest must make an atonement for him for his sin. If, though, he cannot afford enough for a sheep, then he must bring as his guilt offering for the sin that he has committed 2 turtle doves, or 2 male pigeons to Jehovah, one for a sin offering, and one for a burnt offering. And he must bring them to the priest, who must present first the one for the sin offering, and nip off its head at the front of its neck, but he should not sever it. And he must spatter some of the blood of the sin offering upon the side of the altar, but the remainder of the blood will be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. And the other one he will handle as a burnt offering according to the regular procedure, and the priest must make an atonement for him for his sin that he has committed, and so it must be forgiven him. Now if he does not have the means for 2 turtle doves or 2 male pigeons, then he must bring as his offering for the sin he has committed the 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering. He must not put oil upon it, and he must not place frankincense upon it, for it is a sin offering. And he must bring it to the priest, and the priest must grasp from it his handful as a remembrancer of it, and must make it smoke on the altar upon Jehovah's offerings made by fire. It is a sin offering. And the priest must make an atonement for him for his sin that he has committed, any one of these sins, and so it must be forgiven him, and it must become the priest's, the same as a grain offering. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, In case a soul behaves unfaithfully, in that he actually sins by mistake against the holy things of Jehovah, then he must bring as his guilt offering to Jehovah a sound ram from the flock, according to the estimated value in silver shekels, by the shekel of the holy place, as a guilt offering. And he will make compensation for the sin he has committed against the holy place, and he will add to it a fifth of it. And he must give it to the priest, that the priest may make an atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering, and so it must be forgiven him. And if a soul sins in that he does do one of all the things that Jehovah commands should not be done, although he did not know it, yet he has become guilty and must answer for his error. And he must bring a sound ram from the flock according to the estimated value, for a guilt offering, to the priest. And the priest must make an atonement for him for his mistake that he committed unintentionally, although he himself did not know it, and so it must be forgiven him. It is a guilt offering. He has positively become guilty against Jehovah. Chapter 6. And Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, In case a soul sins in that he does behave unfaithfully toward Jehovah, and does deceive his associate about something in his charge, or a deposit in hand, or a robbery, or he does defraud his associate, or he does find something lost and is actually deceptive about it, and does swear falsely over any of all the things that the man might do to sin by them, then it must occur that in case he sins and indeed becomes guilty, he must return the robbed thing which he has robbed, or the extorted thing which he has taken by fraud, or the thing in his charge which was put in his charge, or the thing lost that he has found, or anything at all over which he might swear falsely, and he must make compensation for it in its full amount, and he will add to it a fifth of it. To the one whose it is, he will give it on the day his guilt is proved. And as his guilt offering he will bring to Jehovah a sound ram from the flock according to the estimated value, for a guilt offering to the priest. And the priest must make an atonement for him before Jehovah, and so it must be forgiven him regarding any of all the things that he might do resulting in guiltiness by it. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Command Aaron and his son, saying, This is the law of the burnt offering. The burnt offering will be on the hearth upon the altar all night long until the morning, and the fire of the altar will be kindled in it. And the priest must clothe himself with his official dress of linen, and he will put the linen drawers on over his flesh. Then he must lift up the fatty ashes of the burnt offering that the fire regularly consumes upon the altar, and he must place them beside the altar. And he must strip off his garments and put on other garments, and he must take the fatty ashes out to a clean place outside the camp. And the fire on the altar will be kept burning on it. It must not go out. And the priest must burn wood on it morning by morning, and set the burnt offering in order over it, and he must make the fatty pieces of the communion sacrifices smoke over it. Fire will be kept constantly burning on the altar. It must not go out. Now this is the law of the grain offering. You sons of Aaron, present it before Jehovah in front of the altar. And one of them must lift up by his handful some of the fine flour of the grain offering, and some of its oil, and all the frankincense that is upon the grain offering. And he must make it smoke upon the altar as a restful odor for a remembrancer of it to Jehovah. And what is left of it, Aaron and his sons will eat. It will be eaten as unfermented cakes in a holy place. They will eat it in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It should not be baked with anything leavened. I have given it as their share out of my offerings made by fire. It is something most holy, like the sin offering and like the guilt offering. Every male among the sons of Aaron will eat it. It is an allowance to time indefinite throughout your generations from Jehovah's offerings made by fire. Everything that may touch them will become holy. And Jehovah went on speaking to Moses, saying, This is the offering of Aaron and his sons that they will present to Jehovah on the day of his being anointed. the 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering constantly, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening. It will be made with oil upon a griddle. You will bring it well mixed. You will present the pastries of the grain offering in pieces as a restful odor to Jehovah. And the priest, the one anointed in place of him from among his sons, will make it. It is a regulation to time indefinite. As a whole offering it will be made to smoke to Jehovah. And every grain offering of a priest should prove to be a whole offering. It must not be eaten. And Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the sin offering. In the place where the burnt offering is regularly slaughtered, the sin offering will be slaughtered before Jehovah. It is a most holy thing. The priest who offers it for sin will eat it. In a holy place it will be eaten in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. Everything that may touch its flesh will become holy. And when anyone spatters some of its blood upon the garment, you will wash what he spatters blood upon in a holy place. And the earthenware vessel in which it may be boiled is to be shattered. But if it was boiled in a copper vessel, then it must be scoured and rinsed with water. Every male among the priests will eat it. It is something most holy. However, no sin offering of which some of the blood will be brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy place must be eaten. It is to be burned with fire. Chapter 7. And this is the law of the guilt offering. It is something most holy. In the place where they regularly slaughter the burnt offering, they will slaughter the guilt offering, and its blood one will sprinkle round about upon the altar. As for all its fat, he will present of it the fatty tail, and the fat that covers the intestines, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, the same as that upon the loins. And as for the appendage upon the liver, he will remove it along with the kidneys. And the priest must make them smoke on the altar as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. It is a guilt offering. Every male among the priests will eat it. In a holy place it will be eaten. It is something most holy. Like the sin offering, so is the guilt offering. There is one law for them. The priest who will make atonement with it, his it will become. As for the priest who presents the burnt offering of any man, the skin of the burnt offering that he has presented to the priest will become his. And every grain offering that may be baked in the oven, and every one made in the deep fat kettle, and upon the griddle, belongs to the priest who presents it. It will become his. But every grain offering that is moistened with oil or dry will come to be for all of Aaron's sons, for the one the same as for the other. Now this is the law of the communion sacrifice that anyone will present to Jehovah. If he would present it in expression of thanksgiving, then he must present along with the sacrifice of thanksgiving unfermented ring-shaped cakes moistened with oil, and unfermented wafers smeared with oil, and well-mixed fine flour as ring-shaped cakes moistened with oil. Along with ring-shaped cakes of leavened bread, he will present his offering together with the thanksgiving sacrifice of his communion sacrifices. And out of it he must present one of each offering as a sacred portion to Jehovah. As for the priest who sprinkles the blood of the communion sacrifices, it will become his. And the flesh of the thanksgiving sacrifice of his communion sacrifices is to be eaten on the day of his offering. He must not save up any of it until morning. And if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow or a voluntary offering, it is to be eaten on the day of his presenting his sacrifice, and on the next day what is left of it also may be eaten. But what is left of the flesh of the sacrifice on the 3rd day is to be burned with fire. However, if any of the flesh of his communion sacrifice should at all be eaten on the 3rd day, the one presenting it will not be accepted with approval. it will not be put to his account. It will become a foul thing, and the soul that eats some of it will answer for his error. And the flesh that may touch anything unclean is not to be eaten. It is to be burned with fire. As for the flesh, everybody clean may eat the flesh. And the soul who eats the flesh of the communion sacrifice, which is for Jehovah, while his uncleanness is upon him, that soul must be cut off from his people. And in case a soul touches anything unclean, the uncleanness of a man or an unclean beast or any unclean loathsome thing, and actually eats some of the flesh of the communion sacrifice, which is for Jehovah, that soul must be cut off from his people. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, You must not eat any fat of a bull or a young ram or a goat. Now the fat of a body already dead, and the fat of an animal torn to pieces may be used for anything else conceivable, but you must not eat it at all. For anyone eating fat from the beast from which he presents it as an offering made by fire to Jehovah, the soul that eats must be cut off from his people. And you must not eat any blood in any places where you dwell, whether that of fowl or that of beast. Any soul who eats any blood, that soul must be cut off from his people. And Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, He who presents his communion sacrifice to Jehovah will bring his offering to Jehovah from his communion sacrifice. His hands will bring as Jehovah's offerings, made by fire, the fat upon the breast. He will bring it with the breast to wave it to and fro, as a wave offering before Jehovah. And the priest must make the fat smoke upon the altar, but the breast must become Aaron's and his sons. And you will give the right leg as a sacred portion to the priest from your communion sacrifices. That one of Aaron's sons who presents the blood of the communion sacrifices and the fat, the right leg will become his as a portion. For the breast of the wave offering and the leg of the sacred portion I do take from the sons of Israel from their communion sacrifices, and I shall give them to Aaron the priest and his sons, as a regulation to time indefinite from the sons of Israel. This was the priestly share of Aaron, and the priestly share of his sons from Jehovah's offerings made by fire, on the day that he presented them to act as priests to Jehovah, just as Jehovah had commanded to give it to them on the day of his anointing them from among the sons of Israel. It is a statute to time indefinite for their generations. This is the law concerning the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the sin offering, and the guilt offering, and the installation sacrifice, and the communion sacrifice, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses in Mount Sinai, in the day of his commanding the sons of Israel to present their offerings to Jehovah in the wilderness of Sinai. Chapter 8. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses, saying, Take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments, and the anointing oil, and the bull of the sin offering, and the 2 rams, and the basket of unfermented cakes, and make all the assembly congregate at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then Moses did just as Jehovah had commanded him, and the assembly congregated at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Moses now said to the assembly, This is the thing that Jehovah has given command to do. So Moses brought Aaron and his sons near and washed them with water. After that he put the robe upon him, and girded him with the sash, and clothed him with the sleeveless coat, and put the ephod upon him, and girded him with the girdle of the ephod, and bound it closely to him with it. Next he placed the breastpiece upon him, and put in the breastpiece the Urim and the Thummim. Then he placed the turban upon his head, and placed upon the turban at the forefront of it the shining plate of gold, the holy sign of dedication, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Moses now took the anointing oil, and anointed the tabernacle, and all that was in it, and sanctified them. After that he spattered some of it 7 times upon the altar, and anointed the altar and all its utensils, and the basin, and its stand, so as to sanctify them. Finally he poured some of the anointing oil upon Aaron's head, and anointed him so as to sanctify him. Moses then brought Aaron's sons near, and clothed them with robes, and girded them with sashes, and wrapped the headgear upon them, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Then he led up the bull of the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands upon the head of the bull of the sin offering. And Moses proceeded to slaughter it, and take the blood, and put it with his finger upon the horns of the altar round about, and purify the altar from sin. But the rest of the blood he poured at the base of the altar, that he might sanctify it, to make atonement upon it. After that he took all the fat that was upon the intestines, and the appendage of the liver, and the 2 kidneys and their fat, and Moses made them smoke upon the altar. And he had the bull and its skin and its flesh and its dung burned with fire outside the camp, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. He now brought the ram of the burnt offering near, and Aaron and his sons then laid their hands upon the head of the ram. After that Moses slaughtered it, and sprinkled the blood round about upon the altar. And he cut up the ram into its pieces, and Moses proceeded to make the head and the pieces and the suet smoke. And the intestines and the shanks he washed with water, and Moses then made the entire ram smoke upon the altar. It was a burnt offering for a restful odor. It was an offering made by fire to Jehovah, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Then he brought the second ram, the ram of the installation, near, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands upon the ram's head. After that Moses slaughtered it, and took some of its blood, and put it upon the lobe of Aaron's right ear, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot. Next Moses brought Aaron's sons near, and put some of the blood upon the lobe of their right ear, and upon the thumb of their right hand, and upon the big toe of their right foot. But Moses sprinkled the rest of the blood round about upon the altar. Then he took the fat, and the fat tail, and all the fat that was upon the intestines, and the appendage of the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and their fat, and the right leg. And out of the basket of unfermented cakes that was before Jehovah, he took 1 unfermented ring-shaped cake, and 1 ring-shaped cake of oiled bread, and 1 wafer. He then placed them upon the fatty pieces and the right leg. After that he put all of them upon the palms of Aaron, and the palms of his sons, and began to wave them to and fro as a wave offering before Jehovah. Then Moses took them off their palms and made them smoke upon the altar on top of the burnt offering. They were an installation sacrifice for a restful odor. It was an offering made by fire to Jehovah. And Moses proceeded to take the breast and to wave it to and fro as a wave offering before Jehovah. From the installation ram it became the portion for Moses, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. After that Moses took some of the anointing oil, and some of the blood that was upon the altar, and spattered it upon Aaron, and his garments, and upon his sons, and the garments of his sons with him. Thus he sanctified Aaron, and his garments, and his sons, and the garments of his sons with him. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, "Boil the flesh at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and there is where you will eat it, and the bread that is in the installation basket, just as I was given the command, saying, Aaron and his sons will eat it. And what is left over of the flesh and the bread you will burn with fire. And you must not go out from the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days, until the day of fulfilling the days of your installation, because it will take 7 days to fill your hand with power. Just as it has been done this day, Jehovah has commanded to be done so as to make atonement for you. And you will stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days, and you must keep the obligatory watch of Jehovah, that you may not die, for so I have been commanded. And Aaron and his sons proceeded to do all the things that Jehovah had commanded by means of Moses. Chapter 9. And it came about on the 8th day that Moses called Aaron and his sons and the older men of Israel. Then he said to Aaron, Take for yourself a young calf for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering, sound ones, and present them before Jehovah. But to the sons of Israel you will speak, saying, Take a male goat for a sin offering, and a calf and a young ram, each a year old, sound ones, for a burnt offering, and a bull and a ram for communion sacrifices, to sacrifice them before Jehovah, and a grain offering moistened with oil, because today is when Jehovah will certainly appear to you. Accordingly, they took what Moses had commanded before the tent of meeting. Then the whole assembly came near and stood before Jehovah. And Moses went on to say, This is the thing that Jehovah has commanded you should do, that the glory of Jehovah may appear to you. Then Moses said to Aaron, Go near to the altar, and render up your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make atonement in your own behalf and in behalf of your house, and render up the offering of the people, and make atonement in their behalf, just as Jehovah has commanded. Aaron immediately went near to the altar and slaughtered the calf of the sin offering that was for him. Then Aaron's sons presented the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood, and put it upon the horns of the altar, and the rest of the blood he poured at the base of the altar. And he made the fat, and the kidneys, and the appendage of the liver from the sin offering smoke upon the altar, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. And he burned the flesh and the skin with fire outside the camp. Then he slaughtered the burnt offering, and Aaron's sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it round about upon the altar. And they handed him the burnt offering in its pieces, and the head, and he proceeded to make them smoke upon the altar. Further he washed the intestines and the shanks, and made them smoke upon the burnt offering on the altar. He now went presenting the offering of the people, and took the goat of the sin offering that was for the people, and slaughtered it, and made an offering for sin with it, as with the first. Then he presented the burnt offering, and handled it according to the regular procedure. He next presented the grain offering, and filled his hand with some of it, and made it smoke upon the altar, apart from the burnt offering of the morning. After that he slaughtered the bull and the ram of the communion sacrifice that was for the people. Then Aaron's sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it round about upon the altar. As for the fatty pieces of the bull, and the fat tail of the ram, and the fat covering and the kidneys, and the appendage of the liver, they now placed the fatty pieces upon the breasts, after which he made the fatty pieces smoke upon the altar. But the breasts and the right leg Aaron waved to and fro as a wave offering before Jehovah, just as Moses had commanded. Then Aaron raised his hands toward the people, and blessed them, and came down from rendering the sin offering and the burnt offering and the communion sacrifices. Finally Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, and came out and blessed the people. Then Jehovah's glory appeared to all the people, and fire came out from before Jehovah, and began consuming the burnt offering and the fatty pieces upon the altar. When all the people got to see it, they broke out into shouting, and went falling upon their faces. Chapter 10. Later on Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu took up and brought each one his fire holder, and put fire in them, and placed incense upon it. And they began offering before Jehovah illegitimate fire, which he had not prescribed for them. At this a fire came out from before Jehovah, and consumed them, so that they died before Jehovah. Then Moses said to Aaron, This is what Jehovah has spoken, saying, Among those near to me let me be sanctified, and before the face of all the people let me be glorified." And Aaron kept silent. So Moses called Mishael and Elzaphan, the sons of Uzziel, Aaron's uncle, and said to them, "Come near, carry your brothers from in front of the holy place to outside the camp." They accordingly came near, and carried them in their robes to outside the camp, just as Moses had spoken. Subsequently Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar his other sons, "Do not let your heads go ungroomed, and you must not tear your garments, that you may not die, and that he may not become indignant against all the assembly. But your brothers of the whole house of Israel will do the weeping over the burning, which Jehovah has made burn. And from the entrance of the tent of meeting you must not go out for fear you may die, because Jehovah's anointing oil is upon you." So they did according to Moses' word. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Aaron, saying, "Do not drink wine or intoxicating liquor, you and your sons with you, when you come into the tent of meeting, that you may not die. It is a statute to time indefinite for your generations, both in order to make a distinction between the holy thing and the profane, and between the unclean thing and the clean, and in order to teach the sons of Israel all the regulations that Jehovah has spoken to them by means of Moses." Then Moses spoke to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his sons that were left. "Take the grain offering that was left over from Jehovah's offerings made by fire, and eat it unfermented near the altar, because it is something most holy. And you must eat it in a holy place, because it is your allowance and the allowance of your sons from Jehovah's offerings made by fire, for so I have been commanded. And you will eat the breast of the wave offering, and the leg of the sacred portion in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you, because they have been given as your allowance, and the allowance of your sons from the communion sacrifices of the sons of Israel. They will bring the leg of the sacred portion, and the breast of the wave offering along with the offerings made by fire, of the fatty pieces, in order to wave the wave offering to and fro before Jehovah. And it must serve as an allowance to time indefinite for you, and your sons with you, just as Jehovah has commanded." And Moses searched thoroughly for the goat of the sin offering, and look, it had been burned up. So he grew indignant at Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's sons that were left, saying, "Why did you not eat the sin offering in the place that is holy, since it is something most holy, and he has given it to you that you may answer for the error of the assembly, so as to make atonement for them before Jehovah? Look, its blood has not been brought into the holy place within. You should have eaten it without fail in the holy place, just as I have been commanded." At this Aaron spoke to Moses, "Look, today they have presented their sin offering and their burnt offering before Jehovah, while such things as these began to befall me. And had I eaten the sin offering today, would it prove satisfactory in Jehovah's eyes?" When Moses got to hear that, then it proved satisfactory in his eyes. Chapter 11. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, This is the living creature that you may eat of all the beasts that are upon the earth. Every creature that splits the hoof and forms a cleft in the hoofs, and chews the cud among the beasts, that is what you may eat. Only this is what you must not eat among the chewers of the cud and the splitters of the hoof: the camel, because it is a chewer of the cud, but is no splitter of the hoof. It is unclean for you. Also the rock badger, because it is a chewer of the cud, but does not split the hoof. It is unclean for you. Also the hare, because it is a chewer of the cud, but it does not have the hoof split. It is unclean for you. Also the pig, because it is a splitter of the hoof, and a former of a cleft in the hoof, but it itself does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat any of their flesh, and you must not touch their dead body. They are unclean for you. This is what you may eat of everything that is in the waters. Everything that has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas and in the torrents, those you may eat. And everything in the seas and the torrents that has no fins and scales, out of every swarming creature of the waters, and out of every living soul that is in the waters, they are a loathsome thing for you. Yes, they will become a loathsome thing to you. You must not eat any of their flesh, and you are to loathe their dead body. Everything in the waters that has no fins and scales is a loathsome thing to you. And these are what you will loathe among the flying creatures. They should not be eaten. They are a loathsome thing. The eagle and the osprey and the black vulture, and the red kite and the black kite according to its kind, and every raven according to its kind, and the ostrich and the owl and the gull and the falcon according to its kind, and the little owl and the cormorant and the long-eared owl, and the swan and the pelican and the vulture, and the stork, the heron according to its kind, and the hoopoe and the bat. Every winged, swarming creature that goes on all fours is a loathsome thing to you. Only this is what you may eat of all the winged, swarming creatures that go upon all fours, those that have leaper legs above their feet with which to leap upon the earth. These are the ones of them you may eat of: the migratory locust according to its kind, and the edible locust after its kind, and the cricket according to its kind, and the grasshopper according to its kind. And every other winged, swarming creature that does have 4 legs is a loathsome thing to you. So by these you would make yourselves unclean. Every one touching their dead bodies will be unclean until the evening. And every one carrying any of their dead bodies will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. As for any beast that is a splitter of the hoof, but is not a former of a cleft, and is not a chewer of the cud, they are unclean for you. Every one touching them will be unclean. As for every creature going upon its paws, among all the living creatures that go on all fours, they are unclean to you. Every one touching their dead bodies will be unclean until the evening. And he who carries their dead bodies will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. They are unclean to you. And this is what is unclean to you among the swarming creatures that swarm upon the earth: the mole rat and the jerboa, and the lizard according to its kind, and the gecko fanfoot, and the large lizard, and the newt, and the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all the swarming creatures. Every one touching them in their death state will be unclean until the evening. Now anything upon which any of them should fall in its death state will be unclean, whether it be some wooden vessel, or a garment, or a skin, or sackcloth. Any vessel of which some use is made will be put in water, and it must be unclean until the evening, and then be clean. As for any earthenware vessel into which any of them should fall, anything that is within it will be unclean, and you will smash it. Any sort of food that may be eaten upon which water may come from it will be unclean, and any drink that may be drunk in any vessel will be unclean. And everything upon which any of their dead bodies may fall will be unclean. Whether oven or jar stand, it is to be broken down. They are unclean, and they will become unclean to you. Only a spring and a pit of impounded waters will continue clean, but anyone touching their dead bodies will be unclean. And should any of their dead bodies fall upon any seed of a plant that is to be sown, it is clean. But in case water should be put upon seed, and something of their dead bodies had fallen upon it, it is unclean to you. Now in case any beast that is yours for food should die, he who touches its dead body will be unclean until the evening. And he who eats any of its dead body will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. And he who carries off its dead body will wash his garments, and he must be unclean until the evening. And every swarming creature that swarms upon the earth is a loathsome thing. It must not be eaten. As for any creature that goes upon the belly, and any creature that goes on all fours, or any great number of feet of all the swarming creatures that swarm upon the earth, you must not eat them, because they are a loathsome thing. Do not make your souls loathsome with any swarming creature that swarms, and you must not make yourselves unclean by them, and actually get unclean by them. For I am Jehovah your God, and you must sanctify yourselves, and you must prove yourselves holy, because I am holy. So you must not make your souls unclean by any swarming creature that moves upon the earth. For I am Jehovah who is leading you up out of the land of Egypt to prove myself God to you, and you must prove yourselves holy, because I am holy. This is the law about the beast and the flying creature and every living soul that moves about in the waters, and concerning every soul that swarms upon the earth, in order to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that is eatable and the living creature that may not be eaten. Chapter 12. And Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, In case a woman conceives seed and does bear a male, she must be unclean 7 days, as in the days of the impurity, when she is menstruating, she will be unclean. And on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin will be circumcised. For 33 days more she will stay in the blood of purification. She should not touch any holy thing, and she should not come into the holy place until the fulfilling of the days of her purification. Now if she should bear a female, she must then be unclean 14 days, as during her menstruation. For 66 days more she will stay with the blood of purification. Then at the fulfilling of the days of her purification for a son or for a daughter, she will bring a young ram in its first year for a burnt offering, and a male pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering to the entrance of the tent of meeting to the priest. And he must present it before Jehovah, and make atonement for her, and she must be clean from the source of her blood. This is the law about her who bears either a male or a female. But if she cannot afford enough for a sheep, she must then take 2 turtle doves or 2 male pigeons, one for a burnt offering and one for a sin offering, and the priest must make atonement for her, and she must be clean. Chapter 13. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, In case a man develops in the skin of his flesh an eruption or a scab or a blotch, and it does develop in the skin of his flesh into the plague of leprosy, he must then be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priests. And the priest must look at the plague in the skin of the flesh. When the hair in the plague has turned white, and the appearance of the plague is deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is the plague of leprosy. And the priest must look at it, and he must declare him unclean. But if the blotch is white in the skin of his flesh, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, the priest must then quarantine the plague 7 days. And the priest must look at him on the 7th day. And if in the way it looks the plague has stopped, the plague has not spread in the skin, the priest must also quarantine him another 7 days. And the priest must look at him on the 7th day the 2nd time. And if the plague has grown dull, and the plague has not spread in the skin, the priest must also pronounce him clean. It was a scab, and he must wash his garments and be clean. But if the scab has unquestionably spread in the skin after his appearing before the priest for the establishment of his purification, he must then appear the 2nd time before the priest, and the priest must take a look. And if the scab has spread in the skin, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is leprosy. In case the plague of leprosy develops in a man, he must then be brought to the priest. And the priest must take a look. And if there is a white eruption in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and the raw of the living flesh is in the eruption, it is chronic leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest must declare him unclean. he should not quarantine him, for he is unclean. Now if the leprosy unquestionably breaks out in the skin, and the leprosy does cover all the skin of the one with the plague from his head to his feet, to the full sight of the priest's eyes, and the priest has looked, and there the leprosy has covered all his flesh, he must then pronounce the plague clean. All of it has turned white. He is clean. But on the day the living flesh appears in it, he will be unclean, and the priest must see the living flesh, and he must declare him unclean. The living flesh is unclean. It is leprosy. Or in case the living flesh goes back, and it does change to white, he must then come to the priest, and the priest must look at him, and if the plague has been changed to white, the priest must then pronounce the plague clean. He is clean. As for the flesh, in case a boil develops in its skin, and it does get healed, and in the place of the boil a white eruption has developed, or a reddish-white blotch, he must then show himself to the priest. And the priest must look, and if its appearance is lower than the skin, and its hair has turned white, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. It has broken out in the boil. But if the priest looks at it, and there is no white hair in it, and it is not deeper than the skin, and it is dull, the priest must then quarantine him 7 days. And if it unmistakably spreads in the skin, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is a plague. But if in its place the blotch should stand, it has not spread. It is the inflammation of the boil, and the priest must pronounce him clean. Or in case there comes to be a scar in the skin of the flesh from the fire, and the raw flesh of the scar does become a reddish-white blotch or a white one, the priest must then look at it. And if the hair has been changed white in the blotch, and its appearance is deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It has broken out in the scar, and the priest must declare him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But if the priest looks at it, and there is no white hair in the blotch, and it is not lower than the skin, and it is dull, the priest must then quarantine him 7 days. And the priest must look at him on the 7th day. If it unmistakably spreads in the skin, the priest must then declare him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But if the blotch stands in its place, it has not spread in the skin, and it is dull, it is an eruption of the scar, and the priest must pronounce him clean, because it is an inflammation of the scar. As for a man or a woman, in case a plague develops in such one on the head or on the chin, the priest must then see the plague. And if its appearance is deeper than the skin, and the hair is yellow and scarce in it, the priest must then declare such one unclean. It is an abnormal falling off of hair. It is leprosy of the head or of the chin. But in case the priest sees the plague of abnormal falling off of hair, and look, its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, the priest must then quarantine the plague of abnormal falling off of hair 7 days. And the priest must look at the plague on the 7th day, and if the abnormal falling off of hair has not spread, and no yellow hair has developed in it, and the appearance of the abnormal falling off of hair is not deeper than the skin, he must then have himself shaved. But he will not have the abnormal falling off of hair shaved, and the priest must quarantine the abnormal falling off of hair 7 days again. And the priest must look at the abnormal falling off of hair on the 7th day, and if the abnormal falling off of hair has not spread in the skin, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, the priest must then pronounce him clean, and he must wash his garments and be clean. But if the abnormal falling off of hair unmistakably spreads in the skin after the establishment of his purification, the priest must then see him, and if the abnormal falling off of hair has spread in the skin, the priest need not make examination for yellow hair. He is unclean. But if in its look the abnormal falling off of hair has stood, and black hair has grown in it, the abnormal falling off of hair has been healed. He is clean, and the priest must pronounce him clean. As for a man or a woman, in case blotches develop in the skin of their flesh, white blotches, the priest must then take a look, and if the blotches in the skin of their flesh are dull white, it is a harmless eruption. It has broken out in the skin. He is clean. As for a man, in case his head grows bald, it is baldness. He is clean. And if his head grows bald up in front, it is forehead baldness. He is clean. But in case a reddish-white plague develops in the baldness of the crown or of the forehead, it is leprosy breaking out in the baldness of his crown or of his forehead. And the priest must look at him. And if there is an eruption of the reddish-white plague in the baldness of his crown or of his forehead, like the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the flesh, he is a leper. He is unclean. Unclean is what the priest should declare him. His plague is on his head. As for the leprous one in whom the plague is, his garment should be torn, and his head should become ungroomed, and he should cover over the mustache and call out, "Unclean! Unclean!" All the days that the plague is in him, he will be unclean. He is unclean. He should dwell isolated. Outside the camp is his dwelling place. As for a garment, in case the plague of leprosy develops in it, whether in a woolen garment, or in a linen garment, or in the warp, or in the woof of the linen and of the wool, or in a skin, or in anything made of skin, and the yellowish-green or reddish plague does develop in the garment, or in the skin, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, it is the plague of leprosy, and it must be shown to the priest. And the priest must see the plague, and he must quarantine the plague 7 days. When he has seen the plague on the 7th day, that the plague has spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in the skin, for any use for which the skin may be made, the plague is malignant leprosy. It is unclean. And he must burn the garment, or the warp, or the woof in the wool, or in the linen, or any article of skin in which the plague may develop, because it is malignant leprosy. It should be burned in the fire. But if the priest takes a look, and there now the plague has not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, the priest must also command that they should wash that in which the plague is, and he must quarantine it a second 7 days. And the priest must look at the plague after it has been washed out, and if the plague has not changed its look, and yet the plague has not spread, it is unclean. You should burn it in the fire. It is a low spot in a threadbare patch on either its underside or its outside. But if the priest has taken a look, and there now the plague is dull after it has been washed out, he must then tear it out of the garment, or the skin, or the warp, or of the woof. However, if it still appears in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, it is breaking out. You should burn in the fire whatever it is in which the plague is. As for the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or any article of skin that you may wash, when the plague has disappeared from them, it must then be washed a second time, and it must be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in the garment of wool, or of linen, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, in order to pronounce it clean, or to declare it unclean. Chapter 14. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, This will become the law of the leper in the day for establishing his purification, when he must be brought to the priest. And the priest must go forth outside the camp, and the priest must look. And if the plague of leprosy has been cured in the leprous one, the priest must then give command, and he must take for cleansing himself 2 live clean birds, and cedar wood, and caucus scarlet material, and hyssop. And the priest must give command, and the one bird must be killed in an earthenware vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he should take it, and the cedar wood, and the caucus scarlet material, and the hyssop, and he must dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. Then he must spatter it 7 times upon the one cleansing himself from the leprosy, and he must pronounce him clean, and he must send away the living bird over the open field. And the one cleansing himself must wash his garments, and shave off all his hair, and bathe in water, and must be clean. And afterward he may come into the camp. And he must dwell outside his tent 7 days. And it must occur on the 7th day that he should shave off all his hair on his head, and his chin, and his eyebrows. Yes, he should shave off all his hair, and he must wash his garments and bathe his flesh in water, and he must be clean. And on the 8th day he will take 2 sound young rams and 1 sound female lamb in its first year, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering moistened with oil, and 1 log measure of oil. And the priest who pronounces him clean must present the man who is cleansing himself and the things before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest must take the 1 young ram, and offer it for a guilt offering together with the log measure of oil, and must wave them to and fro as a wave offering before Jehovah. And he must slaughter the young ram in the place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are regularly slaughtered, in a holy place, because, like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is something most holy. And the priest must take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest must put it upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot. And the priest must take some of the log measure of oil, and pour it upon the priest's left palm. And the priest must dip his right finger into the oil that is upon his left palm, and must spatter some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Jehovah. And of the rest of the oil that is upon his palm, the priest will put some upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot over the blood of the guilt offering. And what is left over of the oil that is upon the priest's palm, he will put upon the head of the one cleansing himself, and the priest must make atonement for him before Jehovah. And the priest must render up the sin offering and make atonement for the one cleansing himself from his impurity, and afterward he will slaughter the burnt offering. And the priest must offer up the burnt offering and the grain offering upon the altar, and the priest must make atonement for him, and he must be clean. However, if he is lowly and does not have enough means, he must then take 1 young ram as a guilt offering for a wave offering in order to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour moistened with oil as a grain offering, and a log measure of oil, and 2 turtle doves, or 2 male pigeons, according as he may have the means, and the one must serve as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. And on the 8th day he must bring them for establishing his purification to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting before Jehovah. And the priest must take the young ram of the guilt offering, and the log measure of oil, and the priest must wave them to and fro as a wave offering before Jehovah. And he must slaughter the young ram of the guilt offering, and the priest must take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and put it upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot. And the priest will pour some of the oil upon the priest's left palm. And the priest must spatter with his right finger some of the oil that is upon his left palm 7 times before Jehovah. And the priest must put some of the oil that is on his palm upon the lobe of the right ear of the one cleansing himself, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the big toe of his right foot, over the place of the blood of the guilt offering. And what is left over of the oil that is on the priest's palm, he will put upon the head of the one cleansing himself, in order to make atonement for him before Jehovah. And he must render up the one of the turtle doves, or of the male pigeons for which he may have the means, the one of them for which he may have the means as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, along with the grain offering. And the priest must make atonement for the one cleansing himself before Jehovah. This is the law for the one in whom the plague of leprosy was, who may not have the means when establishing his purification. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I do put the plague of leprosy in a house of the land of your possession, the one to whom the house belongs must then come and tell the priest, saying, Something like a plague has appeared to me in the house. And the priest must give orders, and they must clear out the house before the priest may come in to see the plague, that he may not declare unclean everything that is in the house, and after that the priest will come in to see the house. When he has seen the plague, then if the plague is in the walls of the house, with yellowish green or reddish depressions, and their appearance is lower than the wall surface, the priest must then go out of the house to the entrance of the house, and he must quarantine the house 7 days. And the priest must return on the 7th day, and must take a look. And if the plague has spread in the walls of the house, the priest must then give orders, and they must tear out the stones in which the plague is, and they must throw them outside the city into an unclean place. And he will have the house scraped off all around inside, and they must pour the clay mortar that they cut off outside the city into an unclean place. And they must take other stones and insert them in the place of the former stones, and he will have different clay mortar taken, and he must have the house plastered. If, though, the plague returns, and it does break out in the house after having torn out the stones, and after having cut off the house and plastered it, the priest must then come in and take a look. And if the plague has spread in the house, it is malignant leprosy in the house. It is unclean. And he must have the house pulled down with its stones and its timbers, and all the clay mortar of the house, and must have it carried forth outside the city to an unclean place. But whoever comes into the house any of the days of quarantining it will be unclean until the evening, and whoever lies down in the house should wash his garments, and whoever eats in the house should wash his garments. However, if the priest comes at all, and he does take a look, and there now the plague has not spread in the house after having plastered the house, the priest must then pronounce the house clean, because the plague has been healed. And to purify the house from sin, he must take 2 birds and cedar wood and caucus scarlet material and hyssop. And he must kill the one bird in an earthenware vessel over running water. And he must take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the caucus scarlet material and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the bird that was killed, and in the running water, and he must spatter it toward the house 7 times. And he must purify the house from sin with the blood of the bird, and the running water, and the live bird, and the cedar wood, and the hyssop, and the caucus scarlet material. And he must send the live bird away outside the city into the open field, and must make atonement for the house, and it must be clean. This is the law respecting any plague of leprosy, and respecting the abnormal falling off of hair, and respecting the leprosy of the garment and in the house, and respecting the eruption and the scab and the blotch, in order to give instructions when something is unclean and when something is clean. This is the law about leprosy. Chapter 15. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, In case any man has a running discharge occur from his genital organ, his discharge is unclean. And this will become his uncleanness by his discharge. Whether his genital organ has flowed with a running discharge, or his genital organ is obstructed from his running discharge, it is his uncleanness. Any bed upon which the one having a running discharge may lie down will be unclean, and any article upon which he may sit will be unclean. And a man who may touch his bed should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And whoever sits upon the article upon which the one having a running discharge was sitting should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And whoever touches the flesh of the one having a running discharge should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And in the case of the one who has a running discharge, spitting upon someone clean, he must in that case wash his garments and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And any saddle upon which the one having a running discharge was riding will be unclean. And anyone touching anything that happens to be under him will be unclean until the evening. And he who carries them will wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And anyone whom the one having a running discharge might touch, when he has not rinsed his hands in water, must then wash his garments and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And an earthenware vessel that the one having a running discharge might touch should be smashed, and any wooden vessel should be rinsed with water. Now in case the one having a running discharge would become clean from his running discharge, he must then count for himself 7 days for his purification, and he must wash his garments and bathe his flesh in running water, and he must be clean. And on the 8th day he should take for himself 2 turtle doves, or 2 male pigeons, and he must come before Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and give them to the priest. And the priest must offer them, the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, and the priest must make atonement for him before Jehovah concerning his running discharge. Now in case a man has an emission of semen go out from him, he must then bathe all his flesh in water, and be unclean until the evening. And any garment and any skin upon which the emission of semen gets to be must be washed with water, and be unclean until the evening. As for a woman with whom a man may lie down with an emission of semen, they must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And in case a woman is having a running discharge, and her running discharge in her flesh proves to be blood, she should continue 7 days in her menstrual impurity, and anyone touching her will be unclean until the evening. And anything upon which she may lie down in her menstrual impurity will be unclean, and everything upon which she may sit will be unclean. And anyone touching her bed should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And anyone touching any article upon which she was sitting should wash his garments, and he must bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. And if it was upon the bed, or upon another article that she was sitting, by his touching it he will be unclean until the evening. And if a man lies down with her at all, and her menstrual impurity comes to be upon him, he must then be unclean 7 days, and any bed upon which he might lie down will be unclean. As for a woman, in case the running discharge of her blood should be flowing many days, when it is not the regular time of her menstrual impurity, or in case she should have a flow longer than her menstrual impurity, all the days of her unclean running discharge will prove as in the days of her menstrual impurity. She is unclean. Any bed upon which she may lie any of the days of her running discharge will become for her as the bed of her menstrual impurity, and any article upon which she may sit will become unclean, like the uncleanness of her menstrual impurity. And anyone touching them will be unclean, and he must wash his garments and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. However, if she has become clean from her running discharge, she must also count for herself 7 days, and afterward she will be clean. And on the 8th day she should take for herself 2 turtle doves, or 2 male pigeons, and she must bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest must make the one a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. And the priest must make atonement for her before Jehovah concerning her unclean running discharge. And you must keep the sons of Israel separate from their uncleanness, that they may not die in their uncleanness for their defiling of my tabernacle which is in their midst. This is the law about the man having a running discharge, and the man from whom an emission of semen may go out, so that he becomes unclean by it, and the menstruating woman in her uncleanness, and any one who has a flow of his running discharge, whether a male or a female, and whether a man who lies down with an unclean woman. Chapter 16. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses after the death of Aaron's 2 sons, for their approaching before Jehovah, so that they died. And Jehovah proceeded to say to Moses, Speak to Aaron your brother, that he should not at all times come into the holy place inside the curtain, in front of the cover which is upon the ark, that he may not die, because in a cloud I shall appear over the cover. With the following Aaron should come into the holy place, with a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He should put on the holy linen robe, and the linen drawers should come upon his flesh, and he should gird himself with the linen sash and wrap himself with the linen turban. They are holy garments, and he must bathe his flesh in water and put them on. And from the assembly of the sons of Israel he should take 2 male kids of the goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And Aaron must present the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and he must make atonement in behalf of himself and his house. And he must take the 2 goats and make them stand before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron must draw lots over the 2 goats, the one lot for Jehovah, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron must present the goat over which the lot came up for Jehovah, and he must make it a sin offering. But the goat over which the lot came up for Azazel should be stood alive before Jehovah to make atonement for it, so as to send it away for Azazel into the wilderness. And Aaron must present the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement in behalf of himself and his house, and he must slaughter the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself. And he must take the fire holder full of burning coals of fire from off the altar before Jehovah, and the hollows of both his hands full of fine perfumed incense, and he must bring them inside the curtain. He must also put the incense upon the fire before Jehovah, and the cloud of the incense must overspread the ark cover, which is upon the testimony, that he may not die. And he must take some of the bull's blood and spatter it with his finger in front of the cover on the east side, and he will spatter some of the blood with his finger 7 times before the cover. And he must slaughter the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, and he must bring its blood inside the curtain, and do with its blood the same as he did with the bull's blood. And he must spatter it toward the cover, and before the cover. And he must make atonement for the holy place concerning the uncleannesses of the sons of Israel, and concerning their revolts and all their sins. And that is the way he should do for the tent of meeting, which is residing with them in the midst of their uncleannesses. And no other man should happen to be in the tent of meeting from when he goes in to make atonement in the holy place until he comes out. And he must make atonement in behalf of himself, and in behalf of his house, and in behalf of the entire congregation of Israel. And he must come out to the altar, which is before Jehovah, and make atonement for it. And he must take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood, and put it upon the horns of the altar round about. He must also spatter some of the blood upon it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it and sanctify it from the uncleannesses of the sons of Israel. When he has finished making atonement for the holy place, and the tent of meeting, and the altar, he must also present the live goat. And Aaron must lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess over it all the errors of the sons of Israel, and all their revolts and all their sins. And he must put them upon the head of the goat, and send it away by the hand of a ready man into the wilderness. And the goat must carry upon itself all their errors into a desert land, and he must send the goat away into the wilderness. And Aaron must come into the tent of meeting, and strip off the linen garments that he put on when he went into the holy place, and he must lay them down there. And he must bathe his flesh in water in a holy place, and put on his garments, and come out and render up his burnt offering, and the people's burnt offering, and make atonement in his own behalf, and in behalf of the people. And he will make the fat of a sin offering smoke upon the altar. As for the one who sent the goat away for Azazel, he should wash his garments, and he must bathe his flesh in water, and after that he may come into the camp. However, he will have the bull of the sin offering and the goat of the sin offering, the blood of both of which was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, taken forth outside the camp, and they must burn their skins and their flesh and their dung in the fire. And the one who burned them should wash his garments, and he must bathe his flesh in water, and after that he may come into the camp. and it must serve as a statute to time indefinite for you people. In the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, you should afflict your souls, and you must not do any work, either the native or the alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst. For on this day atonement will be made for you to pronounce you clean. You will be clean from all your sins before Jehovah. It is a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you must afflict your souls. It is a statute to time indefinite. And the priest who will be anointed, and whose hand will be filled with power to act as priest, as successor of his father, must make an atonement and must put on the linen garments. They are holy garments. And he must make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and for the tent of meeting, and for the altar he will make atonement, and for the priests, and for all the people of the congregation he will make atonement. And this must serve as a statute to time indefinite for you, in order to make atonement for the sons of Israel concerning all their sins once in the year. Accordingly, he did just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Chapter 17. And Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, This is the thing that Jehovah has commanded, saying, As for any man of the house of Israel who slaughters a bull or a young ram or a goat in the camp, or who slaughters it outside the camp, and does not actually bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to Jehovah before the tabernacle of Jehovah, blood guilt will be counted to that man. He has shed blood, and that man must be cut off from among his people, in order that the sons of Israel may bring their sacrifices, which they are sacrificing in the open field, and they must bring them to Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting to the priest, and they must sacrifice these as communion sacrifices to Jehovah. And the priest must sprinkle the blood upon Jehovah's altar at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and he must make the fat smoke as a restful odor to Jehovah. So they should no longer sacrifice their sacrifices to the goat-shaped demons with which they are having immoral intercourse. This will serve as a statute to time indefinite for you, throughout your generations. And you should say to them, As for any man of the house of Israel, or some alien resident who may be residing as an alien in your midst, who offers up a burnt offering or a sacrifice, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to render it to Jehovah, that man must be cut off from his people. As for any man of the house of Israel, or some alien resident who is residing as an alien in their midst, who eats any sort of blood, I shall certainly set my face against the soul that is eating the blood, and I shall indeed cut him off from among his people. For the soul of the flesh is in the blood, and I myself have put it upon the altar for you to make atonement for your souls, because it is the blood that makes atonement by the soul in it. That is why I have said to the sons of Israel, No soul of you must eat blood, and no alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst should eat blood. As for any man of the sons of Israel, or some alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst, who in hunting catches a wild beast or a fowl that may be eaten, he must in that case pour its blood out, and cover it with dust. For the soul of every sort of flesh is its blood by the soul in it. Consequently I said to the sons of Israel, You must not eat the blood of any sort of flesh, because the soul of every sort of flesh is its blood. Anyone eating it will be cut off. As for any soul that eats a body already dead, or something torn by a wild beast, whether a native or an alien resident, he must in that case wash his garments and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening, and he must be clean. But if he will not wash them, and will not bathe his flesh, he must then answer for his error. Chapter 18. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, I am Jehovah your God. The way the land of Egypt does, in which you dwelt, you must not do. and the way the land of Canaan does, into which I am bringing you, you must not do, and in their statutes you must not walk. My judicial decisions you should carry out, and my statutes you should keep so as to walk in them. I am Jehovah your God, and you must keep my statutes and my judicial decisions, which if a man will do, he must also live by means of them. I am Jehovah. You people must not come near, any man of you, to any close fleshly relative of his to lay bare nakedness. I am Jehovah. The nakedness of your father and the nakedness of your mother you must not lay bare. She is your mother. You must not lay bare her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife you must not lay bare. It is your father's nakedness. As for the nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, whether born in the same household or born outside it, you must not lay bare their nakedness. As for the nakedness of the daughter of your son, or the daughter of your daughter, you must not lay bare their nakedness, because they are your nakedness. As for the nakedness of the daughter of your father's wife, the offspring of your father, she being your sister, you must not lay bare her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's sister you must not lay bare. She is the blood relation of your father. The nakedness of your mother's sister you must not lay bare, because she is a blood relation of your mother. The nakedness of your father's brother you must not lay bare. You must not come near his wife. She is your aunt. The nakedness of your daughter-in-law you must not lay bare. She is your son's wife. You must not lay her nakedness bare. The nakedness of your brother's wife you must not lay bare. It is your brother's nakedness. The nakedness of a woman and her daughter you must not lay bare. The daughter of her son and the daughter of her daughter you must not take, in order to lay her nakedness bare. They are cases of blood relationship. It is loose conduct. And you must not take a woman in addition to her sister as a rival to uncover her nakedness, that is, besides her during her lifetime. And you must not come near a woman during the menstruation of her impurity to lay her nakedness bare. And you must not give your emission of semen to the wife of your associate to become unclean by it. And you must not allow the devoting of any of your offspring to Molech. You must not profane the name of your God that way. I am Jehovah. And you must not lie down with a male the same as you lie down with a woman. It is a detestable thing. And you must not give your emission to any beast to become unclean by it, and a woman should not stand before a beast to have connection with it. It is a violation of what is natural. Do not make yourselves unclean by any of these things, because by all these things the nations whom I am sending out from before you have made themselves unclean. Consequently the land is unclean, and I shall bring punishment for its error upon it, and the land will vomit its inhabitants out. And you yourselves must keep my statutes and my judicial decisions, and you must not do any of all these detestable things, whether a native or an alien resident who is residing as an alien in your midst. For all these detestable things the men of the land who were before you have done, so that the land is unclean. Then the land will not vomit you out for your defiling it, the same way as it will certainly vomit the nations out who were before you. In case anyone does any of all these detestable things, then the souls doing them must be cut off from among their people. And you must keep your obligation to me, not to carry on any of the detestable customs that have been carried on before you, that you may not make yourselves unclean by them. I am Jehovah, your God. Chapter 19. And Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, Speak to the entire assembly of the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, You should prove yourselves holy, because I, Jehovah your God, am holy. You should fear each one his mother and his father, and my Sabbaths you should keep. I am Jehovah your God. Do not turn yourselves to valueless gods, and you must not make molten gods for yourselves. I am Jehovah, your God. Now in case you should sacrifice a communion sacrifice to Jehovah, you should sacrifice it to gain approval for yourselves. On the day of your sacrifice, and directly the next day, it should be eaten, but what is left over till the third day should be burned in the fire. If, though, it should at all be eaten on the third day, it is a foul thing. It will not be accepted with approval, and the one eating it will answer for his error, because he has profaned a holy thing of Jehovah, and that soul must be cut off from his people. And when you people reap the harvest of your land, you must not reap the edge of your field completely, and the gleaning of your harvest you must not pick up. Also, you must not gather the leftovers of your vineyard, and you must not pick up the scattered grapes of your vineyard. For the afflicted one and the alien resident you should leave them. I am Jehovah, your God. You people must not steal, and you must not deceive, and you must not deal falsely, anyone with his associate. And you must not swear in my name to a lie, so that you do profane the name of your God. I am Jehovah. You must not defraud your fellow, and you must not rob. The wages of a hired laborer should not stay all night with you until morning. You must not call down evil upon a deaf man, and before a blind man you must not put an obstacle, and you must be in fear of your God. I am Jehovah. You people must not do injustice in the judgment. You must not treat the lowly with partiality, and you must not prefer the person of a great one. With justice you should judge your associate. You must not go around among your people for the sake of slandering. You must not stand up against your fellow's blood. I am Jehovah. You must not hate your brother in your heart. You should by all means reprove your associate, that you may not bear sin along with him. You must not take vengeance, nor have a grudge against the sons of your people, and you must love your fellow as yourself. I am Jehovah. You people should keep my statutes. You must not interbreed your domestic animals of two sorts. You must not sow your field with seeds of two sorts, and you must not put upon yourself a garment of two sorts of thread, mixed together. Now in case a man lies down with a woman and has an emission of semen, when she is a maidservant designated for another man, and she has not in any way been redeemed, nor has freedom been given her, punishment should take place. They should not be put to death, because she was not set free. And he must bring his guilt offering to Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram of guilt offering. And the priest must make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Jehovah for his sin that he committed, and his sin that he committed must be forgiven him. And in case you people come into the land, and you must plant any tree for food, you must also consider its fruitage impure as its foreskin. For 3 years it will continue uncircumcised for you. It should not be eaten. But in the 4th year, all its fruit will become a holy thing of festal exaltation to Jehovah. And in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit in order to add its produce to yourselves. I am Jehovah your God. You must eat nothing along with blood. You must not look for omens, and you must not practice magic. You must not cut your side locks short around, and you must not destroy the extremity of your beard. And you must not make cuts in your flesh for a deceased soul, and you must not put tattoo marking upon yourselves. I am Jehovah. Do not profane your daughter by making her a prostitute, in order that the land may not commit prostitution, and the land actually be filled with loose morals. My Sabbaths you should keep, and you should stand in awe of my sanctuary. I am Jehovah. Do not turn yourselves to the spirit mediums, and do not consult professional foretellers of events, so as to become unclean by them. I am Jehovah, your God. Before gray hair you should rise up, and you must show consideration for the person of an old man, and you must be in fear of your God. I am Jehovah. And in case an alien resident resides with you as an alien in your land, you must not mistreat him. The alien resident who resides as an alien with you should become to you like a native of yours, and you must love him as yourself. For you became alien residents in the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah, your God. You must not commit injustice in judging, in measuring, in weighing, or in measuring liquids. You should prove to have accurate scales, accurate weights, an accurate ephah, and an accurate hin. Jehovah your God I am, who have brought you out of the land of Egypt. So you must keep all my statutes and all my judicial decisions, and you must do them. I am Jehovah. Chapter 20. And Jehovah went on speaking to Moses, saying, You are to say to the sons of Israel, Any man of the sons of Israel, and any alien resident who resides as an alien in Israel, who gives any of his offspring to Molech, should be put to death without fail. The people of the land should pelt him to death with stones. And as for me, I shall set my face against that man, and I will cut him off from among his people, because he has given some of his offspring to Molech for the purpose of defiling my holy place and to profane my holy name. And if the people of the land should deliberately hide their eyes from that man when he gives any of his offspring to Molech by not putting him to death, then I, for my part, shall certainly fix my face against that man and his family, and I shall indeed cut him, and all those who have immoral intercourse along with him, in having immoral intercourse with Molech, off from among their people. As for the soul who turns himself to the spirit mediums and the professional foretellers of events so as to have immoral intercourse with them, I shall certainly set my face against that soul and cut him off from among his people. And you must sanctify yourselves and prove yourselves holy, because I am Jehovah your God. And you must keep my statutes and do them. I am Jehovah, who is sanctifying you. In case there should be any man who calls down evil upon his father and his mother, he should be put to death without fail. It is his father and his mother upon whom he has called down evil. His own blood is upon him. Now a man who commits adultery with another man's wife is one who commits adultery with the wife of his fellow man. He should be put to death without fail, the adulterer and the adulteress as well. And a man who lies down with his father's wife has laid bare the nakedness of his father. Both of them should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. And where a man lies down with his daughter-in-law, both of them should be put to death without fail. They have committed a violation of what is natural. Their own blood is upon them. And when a man lies down with a male, the same as one lies down with a woman, both of them have done a detestable thing. They should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. And where a man takes a woman and her mother, it is loose conduct. They should burn him and them in the fire, in order that loose conduct may not continue in your midst. And where a man gives his seminal emission to a beast, he should be put to death without fail, and you should kill the beast. And where a woman approaches any beast to have a connection with it, you must kill the woman and the beast. They should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. And where a man takes his sister, the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, and he does see her nakedness, and she herself sees his nakedness, it is shame. So they must be cut off before the eyes of the sons of their people. It is the nakedness of his sister that he has laid bare. He should answer for his error. And where a man lies down with a menstruating woman, and does lay bare her nakedness, he has exposed her source, and she herself has laid bare the source of her blood. So both of them must be cut off from among their people. And the nakedness of your mother's sister, and of your father's sister, you must not lay bare. because it is his blood relation that one has exposed. They should answer for their error. And a man who lies down with his uncle's wife has laid bare the nakedness of his uncle. They should answer for their sin. They should die childless. And where a man takes his brother's wife, it is something abhorrent. It is the nakedness of his brother that he has laid bare. They should become childless. And you people must keep all my statutes and all my judicial decisions and do them, that the land to which I am bringing you to dwell in it may not vomit you out. And you must not walk in the statutes of the nations whom I am sending out from before you, because they have done all these things, and I abhor them. Hence I said to you, you for your part will take possession of their ground, and I for my part shall give it to you to take possession of it, a land flowing with milk and honey. Jehovah your God I am, who have divided you off from the peoples. And you must make a distinction between the clean beast and the unclean, and between the unclean fowl and the clean. And you must not make your souls loathsome with the beast and the fowl, and anything that moves on the ground that I have divided off for you in declaring them unclean. And you must prove yourselves holy to me, because I, Jehovah, am holy, and I am proceeding to divide you off from the peoples to become mine. And as for a man or woman in whom there proves to be a mediumistic spirit or spirit of prediction, they should be put to death without fail. They should pelt them to death with stones. Their own blood is upon them. Chapter 21. And Jehovah went on to say to Moses, Talk to the priests, Aaron's sons, and you must say to them, For a deceased soul no one may defile himself among his people. But for a blood relation of his, who is close to him, for his mother, and for his father, and for his son, and for his daughter, and for his brother, and for his sister, a virgin who is close to him, who has not become a man's, for her he may defile himself. He may not defile himself for a woman possessed by an owner among his people, so as to make himself profane. They should not produce baldness upon their heads, and the extremity of their beard they should not shave, and on their flesh they should not make an incision. They should prove themselves holy to their God, and they should not profane the name of their God, because they are those presenting Jehovah's offerings made by fire, the bread of their God, and they must prove themselves holy. A prostitute or a violated woman they should not take, and a woman divorced from her husband they should not take, because he is holy to his God. So you must sanctify him, because he is one presenting the bread of your God. He should prove to be holy to you, because I, Jehovah, who am sanctifying you, am holy. Now in case the daughter of a priest should make herself profane by committing prostitution, it is her father that she is profaning. She should be burned in the fire. And as for the high priest of his brothers, upon whose head the anointing oil would be poured, and whose hand was filled with power to wear the garments, he should not let his head go ungroomed, and he should not tear his garments. And he should not come to any dead soul. For his father and his mother he may not defile himself. He should also not go out from the sanctuary, and not profane the sanctuary of his God, because the sign of dedication, the anointing oil of his God, is upon him. I am Jehovah. And for his part, he should take a woman in her virginity. As for a widow or a divorced woman, and one violated, a prostitute, none of these may he take, but he should take a virgin from his people as a wife. And he should not profane his seed among his people, because I am Jehovah who is sanctifying him. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron, saying, No man of your seed throughout their generations, in whom there proves to be a defect, may come near to present the bread of his God. In case there is any man in whom there is a defect, he may not come near, a man blind or lame, or with his nose slit, or with one member too long, or a man in whom there proves to be a fracture of the foot, or a fracture of the hand, or hunchback, or thin, or diseased in his eyes, or scabby, or having ringworms, or having his testicles broken. Any man of the seed of Aaron the priest, in whom there is a defect, may not approach to present Jehovah's offerings made by fire. There is a defect in him. He may not approach to present the bread of his God. He may eat the bread of his God from the most holy things and from the holy things. However, he may not come in near the curtain, and he may not approach the altar, because there is a defect in him, and he should not profane my sanctuary, for I am Jehovah who is sanctifying them. Accordingly, Moses spoke to Aaron and his sons and all the sons of Israel. Chapter 22. And Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, that they may keep themselves separate from the holy things of the sons of Israel, and not profane my holy name in the things they are sanctifying to me. I am Jehovah. Say to them, Throughout your generations, any man of all your offspring who comes near to the holy things, which the sons of Israel will sanctify to Jehovah, while his uncleanness is upon him, that soul must be cut off from before me. I am Jehovah. No man of Aaron's offspring, when he is leprous or has a running discharge, may eat of the holy things until he becomes clean. Neither he who touches anyone unclean by a deceased soul, or a man from whom there goes out a seminal emission, nor a man who touches any swarming thing that is unclean for him, or touches a man who is unclean for him, as respects any uncleanness of his. The soul who touches any such must be unclean until the evening, and may not eat any of the holy things, but he must bathe his flesh in water. When the sun is set, he must also be clean, and afterward he may eat some of the holy things, because it is his bread. He should also not eat any body already dead, or anything torn by wild beasts, so as to become unclean by it. I am Jehovah. And they must keep their obligation to me, that they may not carry sin because of it, and have to die for it because they were profaning it. I am Jehovah who is sanctifying them. And no stranger at all may eat anything holy. No settler with a priest, nor a hired laborer, may eat anything holy. But in case a priest should purchase a soul, as a purchase with his money, he as such may share in eating it. As for slaves born in his house, they as such may share in eating his bread. And in case the daughter of a priest should become a man's who is a stranger, she as such may not eat of the contribution of the holy things. But in case the daughter of a priest should become a widow or divorced when she has no offspring, and she must return to her father's house as in her youth, she may eat some of her father's bread, but no stranger at all may feed on it. Now in case a man eats a holy thing by mistake, he must then add the fifth of it to it, and must give the holy thing to the priest. So they should not profane the holy things of the sons of Israel, which they may contribute to Jehovah, and actually cause them to bear the punishment of guiltiness because of their eating their holy things. For I am Jehovah who is sanctifying them. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, As for any man of the house of Israel, or some alien resident in Israel, who presents his offering, for any of their vows, or for any of their voluntary offerings, which they may present to Jehovah for a burnt offering, to gain approval for you, it must be sound, a male among the herd, among the young rams, or among the goats. Anything in which there is a defect you must not present, because it will not serve to gain approval for you. And in case a man should present a communion sacrifice to Jehovah in order to pay a vow or as a voluntary offering, it should prove to be a sound one among the herd or the flock, in order to gain approval. No defect at all should prove to be in it. No case of blindness or fracture or having a cut or wart or scabbiness or ringworm, none of these must you present to Jehovah, and no offering made by fire from them must you put upon the altar for Jehovah. As for a bull or a sheep having a member too long or too short, you may make it a voluntary offering, but for a vow it will not be accepted with approval. But one having the testicles squeezed or crushed or pulled off or cut off, you must not present to Jehovah, and in your land you should not render them up. And any of all these from the hand of a foreigner you must not present as the bread of your God, because their corruption is in them. There is a defect in them. They will not be accepted with approval of you. And Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, Should a bull, or a young ram, or a goat be born, then it must continue under its mother 7 days. But from the 8th day and forward it will be accepted with approval as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. As for a bull and a sheep, you must not slaughter it and its young one on the 1 day. And in case you should sacrifice a thanksgiving sacrifice to Jehovah, you should sacrifice it to gain approval for you. On that day it should be eaten. You must not leave any of it until morning. I am Jehovah. And you must keep my commandments and do them. I am Jehovah. And you must not profane my holy name, and I must be sanctified in the midst of the sons of Israel. I am Jehovah who is sanctifying you, the one bringing you out of the land of Egypt to prove myself God to you. I am Jehovah. Chapter 23. And Jehovah went on speaking to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, The seasonal festivals of Jehovah that you should proclaim are holy conventions. These are my seasonal festivals. 6 days may work be done, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convention. You may do no sort of work. It is a Sabbath to Jehovah in all places where you dwell. These are the seasonal festivals of Jehovah, holy conventions, which you should proclaim at their appointed times. In the 1st month, on the 14th day of the month, between the 2 evenings, is the Passover to Jehovah. And on the 15th day of this month is the festival of unfermented cakes to Jehovah. 7 days you should eat unfermented cakes. On the 1st day you will have a holy convention occur. No sort of laborious work may you do. But you must present an offering made by fire to Jehovah 7 days. On the 7th day there will be a holy convention. No sort of laborious work may you do. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, When you eventually come into the land that I am giving you, and you have reaped its harvest, you must also bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. And he must wave the sheaf to and fro before Jehovah, to gain approval for you. Directly the day after the Sabbath, the priest should wave it to and fro. And on the day of your having the sheaf waved to and fro, you must render up a sound young ram in its 1st year for a burnt offering to Jehovah. And as its grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour moistened with oil, as an offering made by fire to Jehovah, a restful odor. And as its drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you must eat no bread, nor roasted grain, nor new grain until this very day, until you're bringing the offering of your God. It is a statute to time indefinite for your generations in all places where you dwell. And you must count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath, from the day of your bringing the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths. They should prove to be complete. To the day after the 7th Sabbath you should count 50 days, and you must present a new grain offering to Jehovah. Out of your dwelling places you should bring 2 loaves as a wave offering. Of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour they should prove to be. They should be baked leavened, as first ripe fruits to Jehovah. And you must present along with the loaves 7 sound male lambs, each a year old, and 1 young bull and 2 rams. They should serve as a burnt offering to Jehovah, along with their grain offering and their drink offerings, as an offering made by fire, of a restful odor to Jehovah. And you must render up 1 kid of the goats as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs, each a year old, as a communion sacrifice. And the priest must wave them to and fro, along with the loaves of the first ripe fruits, as a wave offering before Jehovah, along with the 2 male lambs. They should serve as something holy to Jehovah for the priest. And you must make a proclamation on this very day. There will be a holy convention for yourselves. No sort of laborious work may you do. It is a statute to time indefinite in all your dwelling places for your generations. And when you people reap the harvest of your land, you must not do completely the edge of your field when you are reaping, and the gleaning of your harvest you must not pick up. You should leave them for the afflicted one and the alien resident. I am Jehovah, your God. And Jehovah went on speaking to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the 1st of the month, there should occur for you a complete rest, a memorial by the trumpet blast, a holy convention. No sort of laborious work may you do, and you must present an offering made by fire to Jehovah. And Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, However, on the 10th of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. A holy convention should take place for you, and you must afflict your souls and present an offering made by fire to Jehovah. And you must do no sort of work on this very day, because it is a day of atonement to make atonement for you before Jehovah your God, because every soul that will not be afflicted on this very day must be cut off from his people. As for any soul that will do any sort of work on this very day, I must destroy that soul from among his people. You must do no sort of work. It is a statute to time indefinite for your generations in all places where you dwell. It is a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you must afflict your souls on the 9th of the month in the evening. From evening to evening you should observe your Sabbath. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, On the 15th day of this 7th month is the festival of booths, for 7 days to Jehovah. On the 1st day is a holy convention. No sort of laborious work may you do. 7 days you should present an offering made by fire to Jehovah. On the 8th day there should occur a holy convention for you, and you must present an offering made by fire to Jehovah. It is a solemn assembly. No sort of laborious work may you do. These are the seasonal festivals of Jehovah that you should proclaim as holy conventions for presenting an offering made by fire to Jehovah, the burnt offering and the grain offering of the sacrifice and the drink offerings according to the daily schedule, besides the Sabbaths of Jehovah, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vow offerings, and besides all your voluntary offerings, which you should give to Jehovah. However, on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered the produce of the land, you should celebrate the festival of Jehovah 7 days. On the 1st day is a complete rest, and on the 8th day is a complete rest. And you must take for yourselves on the 1st day the fruit of splendid trees, the fronds of palm trees, and the boughs of branchy trees and poplars of the torrent valley. And you must rejoice before Jehovah your God 7 days. And you must celebrate it as a festival to Jehovah 7 days in the year. As a statute to time indefinite during your generations, you should celebrate it in the 7th month. It is in the booths you should dwell 7 days. All the natives in Israel should dwell in the booths. in order that your generations may know that it was in the booths that I made the sons of Israel to dwell when I was bringing them out of the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah, your God. Accordingly, Moses spoke of the seasonal festivals of Jehovah to the sons of Israel. Chapter 24. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses, saying, Command the sons of Israel that they get for you pure beaten olive oil for the luminary, to light up the lamp constantly. Outside the curtain of the testimony in the tent of meeting, Aaron should set it in order from evening to morning before Jehovah constantly. It is a statute to time indefinite during your generations. Upon the lampstand of pure gold, he should set the lamps in order before Jehovah constantly. And you must take fine flour and bake it up into 12 ring-shaped cakes. 2/10 of an ephah should go to each ring-shaped cake. And you must place them in 2 sets of layers, 6 to the layer set, upon the table of pure gold before Jehovah. And you must put pure frankincense upon each layer set, and it must serve as the bread for a remembrancer, an offering made by fire to Jehovah. On one Sabbath day after another, he should set it in order before Jehovah constantly. It is a covenant to time indefinite with the sons of Israel. And it must become Aaron's and his sons, and they must eat it in a holy place, because it is something most holy for him from Jehovah's offerings made by fire, as a regulation to time indefinite. Now a son of an Israelite woman, who, however, was the son of an Egyptian man, went out into the midst of the sons of Israel, and the son of the Israelitess and an Israelite man began to struggle with each other in the camp. And the son of the Israelite woman began to abuse the name, and to call down evil upon it. So they brought him to Moses. Incidentally, his mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. Then they committed him into custody till there should be a distinct declaration to them according to the saying of Jehovah. And Jehovah proceeded to speak to Moses, saying, Bring forth the one who called down evil to the outside of the camp, and all those who heard him must lay their hands upon his head, and the entire assembly must pelt him with stones. And you should speak to the sons of Israel, saying, In case any man calls down evil upon his God, he must then answer for his sin. So the abuser of Jehovah's name should be put to death without fail. The entire assembly should without fail pelt him with stones. The alien resident, the same as the native, should be put to death for his abusing the name. And in case a man strikes any soul of mankind fatally, he should be put to death without fail. And the fatal striker of the soul of a domestic animal should make compensation for it, soul for soul. And in case a man should cause a defect in his associate, then just as he has done, so it should be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, the same sort of defect he may cause in the man, that is what should be caused in him. And the fatal striker of a beast should make compensation for it, but the fatal striker of a man should be put to death. One judicial decision should hold good for you. The alien resident should prove to be the same as the native, because I am Jehovah your God. After that Moses spoke to the sons of Israel, and they brought forth the one who had called down evil to the outside of the camp, and they pelted him with stones. Thus the sons of Israel did just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Chapter 25. And Jehovah spoke further to Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, When you eventually come into the land that I am giving you, then the land must observe a Sabbath to Jehovah. 6 years you should sow your field with seed, and 6 years you should prune your vineyard, and you must gather the land's produce. But in the 7th year there should occur a Sabbath of complete rest for the land, a Sabbath to Jehovah. Your field you must not sow with seed, and your vineyard you must not prune. The growth from spilled kernels of your harvest you must not reap, and the grapes of your unpruned vine you must not gather. There should occur a Sabbath of complete rest for the land. And the Sabbath of the land must serve you people for food, for you and your slave man and your slave girl and your hired laborer, and the settler with you, those who are residing as aliens with you, and for your domestic animal and for the wild beast that is in your land. All its produce should serve for eating. And you must count for yourself 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 times 7 years, and the days of the 7 Sabbaths of years must amount to 49 years for you. And you must cause the horn of loud tone to sound in the 7th month, on the 10th of the month. On the Day of Atonement you people should cause the horn to sound in all your land. And you must sanctify the 50th year, and proclaim liberty in the land to all its inhabitants. It will become a jubilee for you, and you must return each one to his possession, and you should return each one to his family. A jubilee is what that 50th year will become for you. You must not sow seed, nor reap the land's growth from spilled kernels, nor gather the grapes of its unpruned vines. For it is a jubilee. It should become something holy to you. From the field you may eat what the land produces. In this year of the Jubilee, you should return each one to his possession. Now, in case you should sell merchandise to your associate, or be buying from your associate's hand, do not you wrong one another. By the number of the years after the Jubilee, you should buy from your associate. By the number of the years of the crops, he should sell to you. In proportion to the great number of years, he should increase its purchase value, and in proportion to the fewness of years, he should reduce its purchase value, because the number of the crops is what he is selling to you. And you must not wrong any one his associate, and you must be in fear of your God, because I am Jehovah your God. So you must carry out my statutes, and you should keep my judicial decisions, and you must carry them out. Then you will certainly dwell on the land in security. And the land will indeed give its fruitage, and you will certainly eat to satisfaction and dwell in security on it. But in case you should say, what are we going to eat in the 7th year, seeing that we may not sow seed or gather our crops? In that case I shall certainly command my blessing for you in the 6th year, and it must yield its crop for 3 years. And you must sow seed the 8th year, and you must eat from the old crop until the 9th year. Until the coming of its crop you will eat the old. So the land should not be sold in perpetuity, because the land is mine. For you are alien residents and settlers from my standpoint. And in all the land of your possession you should grant to the land the right of buying back. In case your brother grows poor and has to sell some of his possession, a repurchaser closely related to him must also come and buy back what his brother sold. And in case anyone proves to have no repurchaser, and his own hand does make gain, and he does find enough for its repurchase, he must also calculate the years from when he sold it, and he must return what money remains over to the man to whom he made the sale, and he must return to his possession. But if his hand does not find enough to give back to him, what he sold must also continue in the hand of its purchaser until the Jubilee year, and it must go out in the Jubilee, and he must return to his possession. Now, in case a man should sell a dwelling house in a walled city, his right of repurchase must also continue till the year from the time of his sale finishes out. His right of repurchase should continue a whole year. But if it should not be bought back before the complete year has come to the full for him, the house that is in the city that has a wall must also stand in perpetuity as the property of its purchaser during his generations. It should not go out in the Jubilee. However, the houses of settlements that have no wall about them should be accounted as part of the field of the country. Right of repurchase should continue for it, and in the Jubilee it should go out. As for cities of the Levites with the houses of the cities of their possession, the right of repurchase should continue to time indefinite for the Levites. And where property of the Levites is not bought back, the house sold in the city of his possession must also go out in the Jubilee, because the houses of the cities of the Levites are their possession in the midst of the sons of Israel. Moreover, the field of pasture ground of their cities may not be sold, because it is a possession to time indefinite for them. And in case your brother grows poor, and so he is financially weak alongside you, you must also sustain him. As an alien resident and a settler, he must keep alive with you. Do not take interest and usury from him, but you must be in fear of your God, and your brother must keep alive with you. You must not give him your money on interest, and you must not give your food out on usury. I am Jehovah your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan, to prove myself your God. And in case your brother grows poor alongside you, and he has to sell himself to you, you must not use him as a worker in slavish service. He should prove to be with you like a hired laborer, like a settler. He should serve with you till the Jubilee year. And he must go out from you, he and his sons with him, and he must return to his family, and he should return to the possession of his forefathers. For they are my slaves, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. They must not sell themselves the way a slave is sold. You must not tread down upon him with tyranny, and you must be in fear of your God. As for your slave man and your slave girl, who become yours from the nations that are round about you people, from them you may buy a slave man and a slave girl. And also from the sons of the settlers who are residing as aliens with you, from them you may buy, and from their families that are with you, whom they had born to them in your land, and they must become your possession. And you must pass them on as an inheritance to your sons after you, to inherit as a possession to time indefinite. You may use them as workers, but upon your brothers, the sons of Israel, you must not tread, the one upon the other, with tyranny. But in case the hand of the alien resident or the settler with you becomes wealthy, and your brother has become poor alongside him, and must sell himself to the alien resident or the settler with you, or to a member of the family of the alien resident, after he has sold himself, the right of repurchase will continue in his case. One of his brothers may buy him back, or his uncle, or the son of his uncle may buy him back, or any blood relative of his flesh, one of his family, may buy him back. Or if his own hand has become wealthy, he must also buy himself back. And he must reckon with his purchaser from the year he sold himself to him till the Jubilee year, and the money of his sale must correspond with the number of years. The way work days of a hired laborer are reckoned, he should continue with him. If there are yet many years, he should in proportion to them pay his repurchase price over from the money of his purchase. But if only a few remain of the years until the Jubilee year, he must then make a calculation for himself. In proportion to the years of his, he should pay over his repurchase price. He should continue with him like a hired laborer from year to year. He may not tread him down with tyranny before your eyes. However, if he cannot buy himself back on these terms, he must then go out in the year of Jubilee, he and his sons with him. For to me the sons of Israel are slaves. They are my slaves, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah, your God. Chapter 26. You must not make valueless gods for yourselves, and you must not set up a carved image or a sacred pillar for yourselves, and you must not put a stone as a showpiece in your land in order to bow down toward it. For I am Jehovah your God. You should keep my Sabbaths and stand in awe of my sanctuary. I am Jehovah. If you continue walking in my statutes and keeping my commandments, and you do carry them out, I shall also certainly give your showers of rain at their proper time, and the land will indeed give its yield, and the tree of the field will give its fruit. And your threshing will certainly reach to your grape gathering, and the grape gathering will reach to the sowing of seed, and you will indeed eat your bread to satisfaction and dwell in security in your land. And I will put peace in the land, and you will indeed lie down, with no one making you tremble. And I will make the injurious wild beast cease out of the land, and a sword will not pass through your land. And you will certainly chase your enemies, and they will indeed fall before you by the sword. And 5 of you will certainly chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000, and your enemies will indeed fall before you by the sword. And I will turn myself to you and make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will carry out my covenant with you. And you will certainly eat the old of the preceding year, and you will bring out the old ahead of the new. And I shall certainly put my tabernacle in the midst of you, and my soul will not abhor you. And I shall indeed walk in the midst of you, and prove myself your God, and you, on your part, will prove yourselves my people. I am Jehovah your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt from acting as slaves to them, and I proceeded to break the bars of your yoke, and make you walk erect. However, if you will not listen to me nor do all these commandments, and if you will reject my statutes, and if your souls will abhor my judicial decisions so as not to do all my commandments, to the extent of your violating my covenant, then I, for my part, shall do the following to you, and in punishment I shall certainly bring upon you disturbance with tuberculosis and burning fever, causing the eyes to fail and making the soul pine away. And you will simply sow your seed for nothing, as your enemies will certainly eat it up. And I shall indeed set my face against you, and you will certainly be defeated before your enemies, and those who hate you will just tread down upon you, and you will actually flee when no one is pursuing you. If, though, despite these things you will not listen to me, I shall then have to chastise you 7 times as much for your sins. And I shall have to break the pride of your strength, and make your heavens like iron, and your earth like copper. And your power will simply be expended for nothing, as your earth will not give its yield, and the tree of the earth will not give its fruit. But if you keep walking in opposition to me, and not wishing to listen to me, I shall then have to inflict 7 times more blows upon you according to your sins. And I will send the wild beasts of the field among you, and they will certainly bereave you of children and cut off your domestic animals and reduce the number of you, and your roads will actually be desolated. Nevertheless, if with these things you do not let yourselves be corrected by me, and you just have to walk in opposition to me, yes, I shall then have to walk in opposition to you, and I, even I, shall have to strike you 7 times for your sins. And I shall certainly bring upon you a sword wreaking vengeance for the covenant, and you will indeed gather yourselves into your cities, and I shall certainly send pestilence into the midst of you, and you must be given into the hand of an enemy. When I have broken for you the rods around which ring-shaped loaves are suspended, 10 women will then actually bake your bread in but 1 oven, and give back your bread by weight, and you must eat, but you will not be satisfied. If, however, with this you will not listen to me, and you just must walk in opposition to me, I shall then have to walk in heated opposition to you, and I shall have to chastise you 7 times for your sins. So you will have to eat the flesh of your sons, and you will eat the flesh of your daughters. And I shall certainly annihilate your sacred high places, and cut off your incense stands, and lay your own carcasses upon the carcasses of your dungy idols, and my soul will simply abhor you. And I shall indeed give your cities to the sword, and lay your sanctuaries desolate, and I shall not smell your restful odors. And I, for my part, will lay the land desolate, and your enemies who are dwelling in it will simply stare in amazement over it. And you I shall scatter among the nations, and I will unsheathe a sword after you, and your land must become a desolation, and your cities will become a desolate ruin. At that time the land will pay off its Sabbaths all the days of its lying desolated, while you are in the land of your enemies. At that time the land will keep Sabbath, as it must repay its Sabbaths. All the days of its lying desolated it will keep Sabbath, for the reason that it did not keep Sabbath during your Sabbaths when you were dwelling upon it. As for those remaining among you, I shall certainly bring timidity into their hearts in the lands of their enemies. And the sound of a leaf driven about will indeed chase them away, and they will actually flee as in flight from a sword, and fall without anyone chasing. And they will certainly stumble against one another, as if from before a sword without anyone chasing. And for you there will prove to be no ability to stand in resistance before your enemies. And you must perish among the nations, and the land of your enemies must eat you up. As for those remaining among you, they will rot away because of their error in the lands of your enemies. Yes, even because of the errors of their fathers with them they will rot away. And they will certainly confess their own error and the error of their fathers in their unfaithfulness when they behaved unfaithfully toward me. Yes, even when they walked in opposition to me. Yet I, for my part, proceeded to walk in opposition to them, and I had to bring them into the land of their enemies. Perhaps at that time their uncircumcised heart will be humbled, and at that time they will pay off their error. And I shall indeed remember my covenant with Jacob, and even my covenant with Isaac, and even my covenant with Abraham I shall remember, and the land I shall remember. All the while the land was left abandoned by them, and was paying off its Sabbaths, while it was lying desolated without them, and they themselves were paying for their error, even because they had rejected my judicial decisions, and their souls had abhorred my statutes. And yet for all this, while they continue in the land of their enemies, I shall certainly not reject them, nor abhor them, so as to exterminate them, to violate my covenant with them. For I am Jehovah their God. And I will remember in their behalf the covenant of the ancestors whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt under the eyes of the nations, in order to prove myself their God. I am Jehovah. These are the regulations and the judicial decisions and the laws that Jehovah set between himself and the sons of Israel in Mount Sinai by means of Moses. Chapter 27. And Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, In case a man makes a special vow offering of souls to Jehovah according to the estimated value, and the estimated value has to be of a male from 20 years old up to 60 years old, the estimated value must then become 50 shekels of silver by the shekel of the holy place. But if it is a female, the estimated value must then become 30 shekels. And if the age is from 5 years old up to 20 years old, the estimated value of the male must then become 20 shekels, and for the female, 10 shekels. And if the age is from a month old up to 5 years old, the estimated value of the male must then become 5 shekels of silver, and for the female the estimated value must be 3 shekels of silver. Now if the age is from 60 years old upward, if it is a male, the estimated value must then become 15 shekels, and for the female 10 shekels. But if he has become too poor for the estimated value, he must then stand the person before the priest, and the priest must put a valuation upon him. According to what the vower can afford, the priest will put a valuation upon him. And if it is a beast such as one presents in offering to Jehovah, everything of what he may give to Jehovah will become something holy. He may not replace it, and he may not exchange it with good for bad, or with bad for good. But if he should exchange it at all with beast for beast, it itself must then become, and what is exchanged for it should become, something holy. And if it is any unclean beast, such as one may not present an offering to Jehovah, he must then stand the beast before the priest. and the priest must put a valuation upon it, whether it is good or bad. According to the value estimated by the priest, so it should become. But if he wants to buy it back at all, he must then give a fifth of it in addition to the estimated value. Now, in case a man should sanctify his house as something holy to Jehovah, the priest must then make a valuation of it, whether it is good or bad. According to what valuation the priest makes of it, so much it should cost. But if the sanctifier wants to buy his house back, he must then give a fifth of the money of the estimated value in addition to it, and it must become his. And if it is some of the field of his possession that a man would sanctify to Jehovah, the value must then be estimated in proportion to its seed. If a homer of barley seed, then at 50 shekels of silver. If he should sanctify his field from the year of Jubilee on, it should cost according to the estimated value. And if it is after the Jubilee that he sanctifies his field, the priest must then calculate for him the price in proportion to the years that are left over until the next year of Jubilee, and a deduction should be made from the estimated value. But if the sanctifier of it would at all buy the field back, he must then give a fifth of the money of the estimated value in addition to it, and it must stand fast as his. Now if he should not buy the field back, but if the field is sold to another man, it may not be bought back again. And the field, when it goes out in the Jubilee, must become something holy to Jehovah, as a field that is devoted. The possession of it will become the priest's. And if he sanctifies to Jehovah a field purchased by him, that is no part of the field of his possession, the priest must then calculate for him the amount of the valuation up till the year of Jubilee, and he must give the estimated value on that day. It is something holy to Jehovah. In the year of Jubilee, the field will return to the one from whom he bought it, to the one to whom the possession of the land belongs. Now every value should be estimated in the shekel of the holy place. The shekel should amount to 20 gerahs. Only the firstborn among beasts, which is born as the firstborn for Jehovah, no man should sanctify it. Whether bull or sheep, it belongs to Jehovah. And if it is among the unclean beasts, and he must redeem it according to the estimated value, he must then give a fifth of it in addition to it. But if it should not be bought back, it must then be sold according to the estimated value. Only no sort of devoted thing that a man might devote to Jehovah for destruction out of all that is his, whether from mankind or beasts, or from the field of his possession, may be sold, and no sort of devoted thing may be bought back. It is something most holy to Jehovah. No devoted person who might be devoted to destruction from among mankind may be redeemed. He should be put to death without fail. And every 10th part of the land, out of the seed of the land, and the fruit of the tree, belongs to Jehovah. It is something holy to Jehovah. And if a man wants to buy any of his 10th part back at all, he should give a fifth of it in addition to it. As for every 10th part of the herd and flock, everything that passes under the crook, the 10th head should become something holy to Jehovah. He should not examine whether it is good or bad, neither should he exchange it. But if he would exchange it at all, it itself must then become, and what is exchanged for it should become, something holy. It may not be bought back. These are the commandments that Jehovah gave Moses as commands to the sons of Israel in Mount Sinai.